Welcome to Amidst the Chaos, the podcast where we dare to find God in the middle of real life, not just the highlight reel. I'm your host, Amber Gallion, and around here we build on one foundation only, Jesus. In each episode, I'll share my journey with God, wins, wounds, questions and all, and how He brings order, clarity, and peace into the chaos of everyday life. So take a breath, bring whatever you're carrying today, and let's lean into the one who never changes, even when everything else does. Hey friend, welcome back to Amidst the Chaos. I'm Amber Gallion. This episode, I'm walking through a lesson written by Andrew Womack. It's lesson 1.4, Relationship with God. I already did this lesson a couple months ago as my homework for Charis Bible College. Going through this again so that I could record this podcast showed me that the word is alive because I was getting new things out of it today. Reading this lesson landed at a perfect time for me because these past 2 weeks have been rough. Since posting the last episode, I have had a lot of theft around my sleep. And when sleep gets stolen, one thing after another starts falling apart. My focus shifted away from God. And because of that, I lost that place of rest in Him. One of the things that stood out to me in this lesson was that Adam and Eve's lack of understanding of God's nature was actually part of the temptation. That Satan didn't begin with a weapon, he began with a simple question where he suggested that maybe God wasn't as good as they thought. And today, that is still relevant because it's still one of his oldest tricks to make you doubt the goodness of God. In my case, the distraction didn't look dramatic, it was more subtle, but it did allow me to slowly shift my eyes off of God. And once that happened, confusion and doubt had more room. It is exactly the way it happened with the apple. Satan was trying to make me doubt of what God had said and that God was withholding something from me. Isaiah 4, verse 6 says, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge." And I really saw that in myself these past 2 weeks. Not in a condemning way, but in a revealing way. And the thing that got me back on track was not some magical emotional breakthrough. It was very practical. Getting back into the Word and focusing on my Bible school lessons and giving that priority in my daily planning before I gave attention to anything else. Talking to someone that I trusted before I acted on things. That was a big help as well. And the more I turned my focus back on God, the more my life started to come back in order. And things started falling back into place because my eyes were returning to the right place. Another line that stood out to me was that careful study reveals that Old Testament law was given to make sin that we've committed become exceedingly sinful. That means that the point was not that God is cruel and impossible to please. The point was that people had lost perspective and they no longer saw how destructive sin really was. That part hit me pretty hard because I'm seeing more and more in my own life that consequences don't always show up instantly. I don't make a wrong choice and drop dead on the spot, but that doesn't mean that nothing happened. What I'm seeing now is that sometimes a tiny grain of sand gets stolen here and then another one there, and in the moment, I don't notice it. But over time, I can look back and see the hole that formed where those grains used to be. With Eve, it also started with one small moment, one lie, one distorted thought, one act of agreement, but it had a domino effect. And in my life, it's not that the whole world fell into sin because of my bad choices, but I can clearly see the decay that enters when I keep agreeing with what pulls me away from God. Something else God has been showing me is that sometimes I stayed in a subtle victim mindset. I would think that, this wasn't taught to me as a child. I'm dealing with the consequences now. I need help and I'm not getting it. And, there can be a core of truth in that, but the enemy also works with distorted truth. And it was confronting for me because some of what I said was not completely false, but it was twisted just enough to keep me passive. And I started realizing that in my thinking, there were still distortions mixed in with truths. Wanting to change is not enough if it isn't followed by action. Just like faith without works is dead, it means that change without action is just staying the same. I basically moved from I understand why I am this way to I still have to respond. And that is why this lesson matters so much. It's not just about correcting behavior, it's about relationship. And I heard something in church recently that really stayed with me. First comes relationship, then transformation, then manifestation. And I realized I sometimes focus too much on the manifestation or even the transformation to get to the manifestation while skipping the relationship. And if I'm honest, that makes sense because I've been wounded in relationships all of my life. I've been disappointed and let down. And so, on some level, I didn't see the value of relationship itself. But God is restoring that in me by letting me experience His faithfulness over and over again. And the more I return to Him after I fall, the more trust grows. And the more trust grows, the easier surrender becomes. There's this line from the song, God, I'm just grateful that I'll be leading again this Sunday. And I'm lifting both of my hands. You gave me chance after chance. I'm giving all that I am because you gave me chance after chance. And it's true. He does give chance after chance because every time I turn back to Him, instead of hiding from Him, the relationship deepens. Just like when Adam and Eve sinned, God still pursued the relationship with them. So, to conclude this episode, the more I get to know God, who He really is, the easier it becomes to resist what pulls me away from Him. Because the lesson is right. Adam and Eve's lack of understanding of God's nature was part of the temptation. And the same is true now. Wherever I do not yet know God well, temptation feels stronger, distortion feels smarter, and my own reasoning can still look wise. But the more I know His heart, the less attractive the counterfeit becomes. So my journey continues, and a question that I'll be asking Him a lot is, Holy Spirit, where have I been agreeing with the distorted view of who you are? And what truth about your character do you want to reveal to me instead? And just let Him take me wherever He needs to take me. And I want to encourage you to do the same. All right, we'll leave it here for today. Thanks for listening to Amidst the Chaos. I'm your host, Amber Gallion, and my prayer is that today's episode helped you see Jesus a little more clearly right in the middle of your own mess and motion. If this encouraged you, share it with someone who might need the reminder that God is building order, even when life feels anything but stable. Until next time, keep walking, keep wrestling, and keep building on the only foundation that won't move, Jesus.